June 18, 2020. Markus Braun sits in a Munich police cell. The billionaire CEO of Wirecard, Germany's fintech champion, now accused of fraud. His second-in-command, Jan Marszalek, boards a private jet. Within 48 hours, he'll be gone. 1.9 billion euros is missing. Not stolen in some elaborate heist, not transferred to a hidden account, just missing. Money that auditors believed existed. Money that regulators never verified. Money Wirecard claimed was sitting safely in 2 Philippine banks. 4 days later, Wirecard files for insolvency. A company worth 24 billion euros, wiped out. But here's what makes this collapse different. The warning signs were public for years. Journalists investigated, short sellers warned, whistleblowers came forward, and no one listened. Regulators attacked the critics. Auditors waved it through. Investors doubled down. This is the story of a system that refused to see the truth, and of 2 men who almost got away with one of Europe's biggest corporate frauds. Wirecard didn't begin as a fraud. In 1999, it started as a small payment processor called Infogenie. It handled transactions for online gambling sites and adult entertainment platforms, the kind of businesses traditional banks wouldn't touch. By 2002, it rebranded as Wirecard. Still niche, still legitimate. Everything changed in 2008 when Markus Braun became CEO. Braun had the perfect profile. A PhD in IT, a background in consulting, multilingual, polished, the kind of person investors and politicians trusted. Under Braun, Wirecard expanded aggressively. It acquired competitors, signed deals with major airlines, partnered with Visa and MasterCard, launched payment solutions across Europe and Asia. Revenue climbed, profits surged, the stock soared. By 2018, Wirecard was worth more than Deutsche Bank. That same year, it entered Germany's DAX 30 index, replacing Commerzbank. Politicians celebrated it as proof Germany could compete in the digital economy. Braun became a billionaire. His COO, Jan Marszalek, cultivated relationships with intelligence agencies and government officials across the world. Everything looked perfect. Except the numbers didn't make sense. Wirecard's pitch was simple. Unstoppable growth. Revenue increasing 30 to 40% every year, expanding into Asia and the Middle East. New partners everywhere. Investors loved it. Analysts praised it. The stock kept rising. But most of the growth wasn't real. It came from something called third-party acquiring. Here's how Wirecard explained it. The company partnered with local firms in Asia and the Middle East. These partners processed payments on Wirecard's behalf. Wirecard took a cut of the revenue. On paper, it made sense. Expanding through local partners was a standard strategy. Except the partners didn't exist. Not in the way Wirecard claimed. These partners were often shell companies. Some had no employees. Others were small businesses that had no idea Wirecard was using their names. A few were completely fabricated. Wirecard was booking revenue from transactions that never happened, sales that were fabricated, profits that were fiction. The scale of the deception was staggering. Billions in reported revenue came from these fake transactions. Entire divisions of the company existed only on paper. And the 1.9 billion euros? Wirecard claimed it sat in escrow accounts with these partners, cash held in trust, waiting to be transferred back to Germany. By 2019, the company said it had 1.9 billion euros sitting in 2 Philippine banks. Real money, verified by auditors. When investigators finally contacted the banks, Both replied the same way: "We have no record of these accounts. The money never existed." The fraud was not accidental. It was a system. Wirecard created fake merchant agreements, forged invoices, fabricated transactions, all designed to inflate revenue and make the business look like it was thriving. Internal documents later revealed how deep it went. COO Jan Marszalek coordinated much of the scheme. He worked with associates across Asia to build networks of shell companies. Money moved through fake accounts. Records were forged. Revenue was invented. Marszalek didn't just oversee operations. He built the infrastructure of the fraud itself. He traveled constantly, meeting with contacts who helped create the illusion of a legitimate business. He forged relationships with local fixers who could produce whatever documents Wirecard needed. When investigators or analysts questioned the numbers, Wirecard's response was always the same: "Trust us. Emerging markets work differently. You wouldn't understand." And for a decade, people believed them. Why? Because Ernst & Young approved Wirecard's books every year. EY, one of the big four accounting firms, had been auditing Wirecard since 2009. Every year, they signed off on the financials. No red flags, no warnings. Everything looked clean. Even when rumors of fraud started circulating, EY kept approving the accounts. They failed to verify basic bank balances. They signed off on billions in fake revenue. They missed warning signs that should have been obvious. Their approval gave Wirecard legitimacy. It shouldn't have. Later, after the collapse, questions would surface about how EY missed so much for so long. How could professional auditors fail to verify that 1.9 billion euros actually existed? How could they approve financial statements year after year without checking basic facts? But at the time, their stamp of approval was enough to keep investors convinced. If one of the world's largest auditors said the books were clean, who was going to argue? The answer should have been everyone. Because the cracks were already showing. Wirecard's cash flow didn't match its reported profits. The company kept acquiring businesses at inflated prices. Revenue from Asia kept growing, but no one could explain how. Analysts who looked closer found inconsistencies. Former employees spoke about a culture where questioning the numbers meant losing your job. But EY kept signing off, year after year. October 2015. The Financial Times published its first investigation into Wirecard's accounting practices. The journalist behind it was Dan McCrum. He'd spent months digging into the company's financials. He found inconsistencies in revenue reports, transactions that didn't make sense, partners that couldn't be verified. The article raised questions. It didn't accuse Wirecard of fraud outright. It's just asked, are these numbers real? Wirecard's response was immediate and aggressive. The company didn't just deny the allegations, it attacked. Wirecard hired law firms to threaten the FT with lawsuits. It accused McCrum of working with short sellers to manipulate the stock price. It called the reporting defamatory. And then, something extraordinary happened. Germany's financial regulator, BaFin, didn't investigate Wirecard. It investigated the critics. BaFin banned short selling of Wirecard shares. It launched probes into whether the FT and short sellers were trying to manipulate the market. The message was clear. Questioning Wirecard was dangerous. But McCrum didn't stop. Over the next 5 years, the FT published dozens of articles exposing problems with Wirecard's financials. They tracked fake transactions across Asia. They found forged documents. They spoke to whistleblowers who described systematic deception inside the company. McCrum became a target. Wirecard didn't just fight back in the press. The company hired private investigators to follow him, monitor his movements, dig into his personal life. He received death threats, anonymous messages warning him to stop. Wirecard filed criminal complaints against him in Germany, trying to use the legal system to silence him. Still, the stock kept rising. Investors ignored the warnings. They trusted Braun. They trusted EY. They trusted BaFin, which kept defending Wirecard. The FT was dismissed as biased. McCrum was labeled a tool of short sellers. For 5 years, the FT published evidence. Wirecard denied everything. Investors ignored it. The bubble kept growing. By late 2019, pressure on Wirecard was mounting. The FT's reporting had raised too many questions. Investors were nervous. The stock was volatile. So Wirecard agreed to bring in a second auditor, an independent review to settle the matter once and for all. KPMG was hired to conduct a special audit. In April 2020, KPMG released its findings. The report was devastating. KPMG couldn't verify large portions of Wirecard's revenue. It found evidence of forged documents, suspicious transactions, missing records, shell companies with no real operations. But KPMG stopped short of declaring fraud. The wording was careful, inconclusive. Wirecard spun it as vindication. Braun blamed rogue employees. Marszalek pointed to issues with third-party partners. EY continued to sign off on the accounts. BaFin still refused to launch a proper investigation. Politicians still defended Wirecard. The oversight system had collapsed. This wasn't just negligence. It was deeper than that. BaFin's leadership had close ties to Wirecard executives. Some regulators owned Wirecard shares themselves. There were conflicts of interest everywhere. The very people meant to protect investors had financial stakes in Wirecard succeeding. They attended the same events, moved in the same circles. Some even hoped to work for Wirecard after leaving government. When BaFin finally did act, it was too late. The damage was done. Billions had been lost. Trust in Germany's financial oversight had evaporated. The institutional failure was complete. Auditors didn't audit. Regulators didn't regulate. Politicians didn't ask questions. Everyone wanted Wirecard to succeed. It was a German success story, a tech unicorn, proof that Europe could compete with Silicon Valley. No one wanted to believe it was built on lies. June 2020. EY, Wirecard's auditor, finally demanded direct confirmation of the 1.9 billion euros sitting in Philippine bank accounts. Wirecard provided documents, bank statements, confirmations from 2 banks saying the money was there. EY contacted the banks directly. Both banks replied the same way. These documents are forged. We have no relationship with Wirecard. The accounts don't exist. Everything unraveled instantly. June the 18th. Wirecard admits the money is missing. The stock collapses. It loses 62% of its value in a single day. Braun resigns as CEO. Hours later, police arrest him at his apartment in Munich. Marszalek is supposed to turn himself in to authorities. Instead, he flies to Austria, then disappears. June the 22nd, Wirecard declares insolvency. A company once worth 24 billion euros becomes worthless. Thousands of employees lose their jobs. Investors lose billions. Banks that lent money to Wirecard are left holding worthless debt. The collapse sends shockwaves through Germany's business community. Wirecard had been untouchable, a symbol of German innovation, a company politicians pointed to as proof of Germany's digital future. Now it was a symbol of institutional failure. Pension funds that invested in Wirecard lost millions. Retail investors who trusted the auditors and regulators saw their savings disappear overnight. Small businesses that relied on Wirecard to process payments suddenly had no way to accept transactions. Some went under within weeks. The human cost was staggering. Jan Marszalek remains missing. After fleeing Germany in June 2020, he vanished completely. Interpol issued a red notice. German prosecutors charged him with fraud, embezzlement, and market manipulation. But Marszalek had connections. Before Wirecard collapsed, he'd worked closely with intelligence agencies. He had ties to operatives in Russia. He traveled frequently to the Middle East and Asia, often on business that had nothing to do with payments. Some reports suggest he helped arrange deals involving surveillance technology. Others claim he was involved in operations linked to Russian intelligence services. Marszalek cultivated these relationships carefully. He positioned himself as a useful intermediary, someone who could move between worlds, between legitimate business and intelligence operations. Whatever the truth, Marszalek knew how to disappear. Investigators believe he traveled from Austria to Belarus, then to Russia. There have been unconfirmed sightings near Moscow. Others claim he's been spotted in Southeast Asia. Some intelligence analysts believe he's being protected, that his connections run deep enough to keep him hidden indefinitely. But no arrests, no confirmed location. As of now, Jan Marszalek remains one of Europe's most wanted fugitives, a ghost at the center of a multi-billion-euro crime. Braun, meanwhile, stood trial in 2022. He denied all charges, claimed he'd been deceived by Marszalek and others, said he was a victim, not a criminal. The court didn't buy it. In 2024, a German court convicted him. 11 years in prison. Other senior executives were also convicted. Some cooperated with prosecutors, providing details about how the fraud operated. Others fled, like Marszalek. But the damage was done. Wirecard's collapse triggered investigations across Europe. EY faced lawsuits from investigators who claimed the auditor had failed to detect obvious fraud. Some estimates put EY's potential liability in the billions. The firm tried to defend itself, claimed Wirecard had deceived them, that sophisticated fraudsters can fool even the best auditors. But the evidence suggested otherwise. Basic verification steps had been skipped. Red flags had been ignored for over a decade. Germany's government launched inquiries into BaFin's failures. How had the regulator missed so many red flags? Why had it defended Wirecard instead of investigating? The investigations revealed a culture of complacency. BaFin saw its role as protecting German companies, not scrutinizing them. When journalists raised concerns, BaFin viewed them as threats to Germany's reputation. Politicians who praised Wirecard scrambled to distance themselves. Some resigned, others claimed they'd been misled. But the consequences went far beyond Germany. Wirecard had processed payments for companies around the world. When it collapsed, those businesses lost access to their payment systems overnight. Others had to rebuild from scratch, scrambling to find alternative payment processors while trying to reassure customers. The scandal also exposed deeper problems with corporate oversight in Europe. How had a company this large operated with so little real scrutiny? Why had regulators prioritized protecting Germany's reputation over protecting investors? How had one of the world's biggest accounting firms missed billions in fake revenue for over a decade? The answers pointed to a system that had failed at every level. Investors chased growth without asking hard questions. Auditors signed off on accounts they hadn't properly verified. Regulators protected a national champion instead of doing their jobs. And when journalists tried to expose the truth, they were ignored, threatened, and investigated. The system didn't just fail, it actively worked against the truth. Wirecard was not just a fraud, it was a failure of oversight. Auditors didn't audit, regulators didn't regulate, investors didn't question, politicians didn't look. The company fooled some of the smartest people in finance. It built partnerships with global brands. It was celebrated by governments across Europe, and for years, anyone who questioned it was dismissed. The truth was visible the entire time. In the FT's reporting, in the missing transactions, in the 1.9 billion euros that never existed. But no one wanted to believe it. Braun is in prison, Marshalik is missing, Wirecard is gone. But the system that allowed it, still running.